Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight, where we look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now, as all of you know, China is the world's largest industrial economy and a major player in the BRICS and in global trade. Now, recently they got into a spat with the European Commission, which imposed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles being imported to the EU. And obviously, in a not unexpected move, the Chinese imposed their own tariffs on certain goods that EU countries export to China. And it's attacked one of the largest and most lucrative market segments and products that one EU country exports to China, and that is cognac from France. Now, it's worth understanding that China represents 25% of the global market for cognac, as in the French product, not as brandy as produced by other countries. Now, this has caused the French cognac producer, Moet Hennessy, to consider a very controversial move after the Chinese imposed tariffs of 35% on French cognac imports to the country. So the country's looking at shipping cognac to China in barrels or in tanks and then bottling it in the country, as it appears that only bottled cognac that is hit with the tariffs and not the bulk cognac supplies themselves. Now, what does this mean? But firstly, let's look at the reaction in France to the suggestion that one of the major symbols of Western alcohol culture and significance, cognac, may be bottled in not a strictly defined region of France, as in cognac, but in China. I mean, protests in France have led to a disruption at the world-famous cognac producer Hennessy, with its workers going on strike. Now, the reason for this is as follows. China has increased tariffs on imported bottled cognac by 35%, with Hennessy, as reported by BMF TV, being the brand with the highest level of dependence on Chinese export supplies. Now, LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, the holding company, is currently facing significant challenges. Now, in the third quarter of this year, the company, which owns a large number of fashion brands, luxury brands that is, like Dior, Guerlain, Givenchy, others, etc., and they're producers of elite champagnes and spirits, so its turnover declined by 4.4% to less than 20 billion euros. Now, this downward trend's been happening for some time. In the first half of 2024, it also showed a decline in almost all segments of its businesses, with alcoholic beverages falling as much as 12%. Now, that's at the luxury end of the market, so obviously people are feeling the pinch. Now, it's crucial to understand that China represents a significant market for French cognac, accounting for a staggering quarter of all French exports. Yet, China imports 25% of all French cognac exports. China is the second most important market for cognac producer, and it's currently engaged in an undeclared trade war with the European Union, which has got serious implications for the sector. Now, on November the 4th, the European Commission announced that the countries had approved the introduction of duties on electric cars from China. Now, the duties are applicable and they'll now range from 30 to 36%, depending on the manufacturer. So, in response, China announced two new measures. Just, get the way. Firstly, it'll start assembling cars in Europe, and secondly, it'll introduce duties on wine and spirits, a significant part of which is produced in France. However, that was merely the beginning. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund my channel and to help me develop the website SCOBRICSInsight.com and further develop both the channel and the website. You can do this by making a small donation, which is done by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now just for watching, because every viewer is important to me and I love to receive all your comments and respond to them. Now, the Hennessy management team concluded, quite rightly I suppose, that losing the Chinese market is just not something they're prepared to put up with, and they took a decision to react in a manner that was typical for the French. Looking at a detailed analysis of the condition under which the rules applied, they determined that it was only applied to cognac imported in bottles. So, if the product is delivered to China in a non-bottled format, such as in barrels, the duty will not apply. No bottles, no tariffs. Very clever, isn't it? I mean, it's well worth having good quality lawyers to go through line by line every single detail, because, you might have missed that. Now, previously it would have been unfeasible for Hennessy's management to transport the products in barrels. However, this has been common practice in the 17th and 18th centuries when cognac was smuggled to avoid duties. In the south of the UK, there are so many places where coves and caves where smugglers brought in brandy or cognac in barrels to avoid customs duties even back then. However, to avoid paying the additional cost, they would have to go to some great lengths. I mean, the solution to the problem is to deliver cognac in China in large containers, barrels or special tanks, and arrange for the product to be bottled on site. However, the trade union representatives in Cognac in France have identified this as not something that they really want to happen, and they've decided to take action. Frédéric Merceron, who's representative Force Ouvrier Union among the Hennessy employees, stated the management has told them of this plans to conduct tests on the containers and shifting the bottling operations to China. Now, one can reasonably anticipate the reductions in personnel. I mean, they're going to have to lay off people if they start bottling it over there and not sort of there. Now, this is the first time a well-known company has taken this approach, according to Matthew Devers, who's a member of the CGT. Now, he's transparent in his view that if Hennessy does this as the first to do so, then all the other cognac producers who export to China will inevitably follow suit in order to minimise their cost and avoid the crippling tariffs. Now, there's been an export test scheduled for completion by the end of 2024, and its objective is to assess whether the product quality would be adversely affected by the transportation process. In other words, by the new packaging. Send it in a tank or a barrel and then bottle it. Does it change the product? Well, we will see. Now, Devers states that workers were informed that the related materials, bottles, labels, cork and cardboard packaging would also be sent to China, where the products would be bottled, and all the work previously done in France would be done. But surely it's easier to do all of that, bottles, corks, etc. in China. I mean, it'd certainly be cheaper. Why not ship things all there when it's easy to make it? However, Hennessy's management has issued a formal statement denying the proposed relocation of the bottling of the production from the city of Cognac in the Charente region. However, Hennessy's representatives were obliged to confirm that they were contemplating the bottling and packaging of a portion and a part of their production in China. They said the forthcoming study will focus on the bottling service, which could be a temporary measure and outsourced to a provider based in China, subject to the outcome of the studies being conducted. Yeah, right. Now, the company's objective is to pursue all avenues for finding a solution that protects the interests of the cognac ecosystem and the cognac region as a whole. Yeah, right. It's all about money. Now, the National Interprofessional Cognac Bureau, there's an Interprofessional Cognac Bureau in France, released a statement regarding the situation. Their communique made it clear that the Bureau's role was not to comment on individual strategic decisions of enterprises. And they did acknowledge, however, that the challenging context of the situation, the possibility that some producers may need to use all available means to maintain their positions in the Chinese market, as in maintain their export revenues, of course. They said, our objective is to ensure that cognac remains in the cognac region, commenting one of the hundreds of striking Hennessy employees in a typically French pithy remark. Yeah, right, of course. He said, our presence here is a demonstration of our desire to retain our employment. Well, who wouldn't? Another striker said they're fighting not only for their own jobs, but for the jobs of other city residents and the residents of the whole Cognac region. Cognac is a part of us, it's part of our heart, and we want it to stay here as part of our culture. Now, the decision taken by Hennessy management would inevitably not only affect the direct employees, but other suppliers, carriers, and the resellers of its products. I mean, relocating even a portion of the production to an alternative site would result in a loss of hundreds of jobs, said the union representative Patrick Monnier. Now, as reported by TF1, a Vignier Cognac bottling plant, which fills tens of millions of bottles of the drink every year, it could close. A total of 300 employees could be made redundant at this single enterprise. According to Mernier, 80,000 people in the region are directly or indirectly employed in cognac production. But I mean, the cognac's still going to be produced. It's where it gets bottled. I think that's the thing that they're going to do. I mean, according to the National Interprofessional Cognac Bureau, yeah, that one, estimates that 14,500 individuals are directly involved in production, with another 72,500 indirect jobs in the Charente region. Now, this is not obviously exclusive to Hennessy, as it does apply to the other cognac producers. But it would be unwise to assume that this is going to happen across the board. We will see. Should the trial of transferring bottle and packaging operations to China prove successful, then others are definitely going to follow Hennessy's example in due course. It's just obvious. Nobody wants to pay the 35% duty, and it just isn't going to happen. I mean, the French President Emmanuel Macron, yes, soy boy, Trudeau's best mate, acknowledged the gravity of the cognac issue and has agreed with Xi Jinping to try and find a mutually beneficial compromise. Yeah, good luck with that. Prime Minister Michel Barnier will travel to Beijing in early 2025, trying to reach an agreement, but given he's an EU functionary, that's highly unlikely. However, as is often the case, the relevant decision makers have not really come to a conclusion. I mean, local publications are reporting that the first 1,000-litre cargo of cognac for China is going to depart in mid-December. The quality of the product will be verified on arrival, and if it meets the required standards, it will then be bottled. Plus, the regulations governing cognac production do not stipulate that the renowned alcoholic beverage must be bottled at the same location where it is produced, which is pretty much the same as for things like Scotch whisky or many other particular things. So that provides the brand owners with significant flexibility, although some of the strikers are calling for a review of the current production standards. Plus, Devers has indicated that the Chinese will now be able to sell copies of the bottles and other prestigious products. Well, it's pretty obvious, but, you know. Another stakeholder, SCO, provided a frank assessment. He said, the local culture is heavily influenced by cognac. Without it, the region would cease to function. Well, I can see that. It's obviously part of their way of life. Now, the primary motivation for the strikers is to keep their jobs and keep everything there, but there's not a lot they can do when you've got the EU in Brussels telling them that that's just part and parcel of the war of attrition in a trade war with China. Now, it's been reported in the press that an unofficial decision has been made for the transfer of approximately 10% of Hennessy's bottling production to China. 10%? Well, when it makes up 25% of its there, I think that's unlikely, but it's probably just the initial concerns. So despite that, it could result in Chinese brandy or Chinese bottled brandy being sold in France. But there's not been a significant reaction from the actual general public, and it seems that cognac connoisseurs will have to pay close attention to the labels in the near future to see exactly where the particular bottle of cognac they're about to drink was actually bottled. Now, it's possible that the French produced and bottled batches that are produced there are going to be more expensive, while those bottled in China will remain the preserve of the local Chinese market. In any case, the sales figures will soon demonstrate whether the strategy of Hennessy's market management team has been a success. We shall see, but anyway. Should the transfer of production to China prove successful and profitable, it is likely that that will be expanded, and furthermore, employee strikes in France will not have much impact on the situation because they never do. At the end of the day, globalization and money talks. But I do actually wonder about Chinese knockoffs appearing, and I certainly will be avoiding anything liquid bottled in China, and will stick with Russian and Armenian brandies, which are just as good if not better than many of the French products available. Now, thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe, and if you want to help me out, click on the thanks button, make me a small donation, and I'll thank all of you. Plus the comment section, please comment. I love to see your comments, love to read your comments, and I love to respond to them. See you all again soon. Thank you.